Good evening, Shortcuts. This is video 2 for the price list that will go out on Wednesday, December 18th, the last price list of Shortcuts 2024. This list is the classic rock and pop list, and it does what it says in the tin. It also kicks off with possibly the rarest, most special record I've had in the history of Shortcuts. Yeah. If you would like to be in the price list, drop me an email, shortcutsrecords@gmail.com. All right, how do I possibly live up to that billing of possibly the rarest, most special record I've had in the history of Shortcuts? Well, let me see if I can give you some hints as to what this record is. It came out in 1970. It has a hodgepodge of influences, but rock, soul, jazz, and certainly folk is in the mix. The vocalist is distinctive. He is spiritual. He produced a run of albums in the 70s that are maybe unparalleled in some respects. He's still alive, albeit maybe with a more tarnished reputation than he probably deserves. He's a standout performer on The Last Waltz, the last live performance of the band. He's from Ireland. The album I'm talking about is this, Moondance by Van Morrison. Now, why am I so inordinately excited about this album? Well, let me see if I can show you. If you look on the back, you will see that the typical insert that you would find on a Japanese record doesn't exist for this album. In fact, it's on the back sleeve. And the only insert, which is actually in really nice condition, is lyrics. So that's the first thing that's of interest. This is in magnificent condition. Secondly, it's on the original green Warner label in immaculate condition. And what does all of this mean? This means that this is the genuine Japanese first press. The only entry for a genuine Japanese first press on Discogs is a white label red vinyl promo from 1970. The only other release of this record in Japan was in 1981, which is the copy that I have on my shelf, which I proudly have because it is astonishingly good sounding record. And this is identical. I can't tell them apart. This is the Japanese first press. I cannot find any information anywhere or any data on anyone who has another copy. There is no Discogs entry. Now, I know we have a Discogs invigilator or monitor in the club. So I'm going to ask this person for a bit of help to try and determine what to do with this and how to create the Discog entry and what to do. The reason that I know it's a first press is that it has the same matrix number as the red vinyl white label promo. That's pretty exciting. Because Moondance probably has an argument, a solid argument in the discussion of the greatest Irish album in recorded musical history. It is it is one of those quintessential records that is accessible yet soulful. It doesn't compromise, yet it has songs that everyone loves, like Moondance, the title track. In my case, Into the Mystic is It Stoned Me, Crazy Love. You could go on and on. I think it's genuinely in the discussion for the list of greatest albums of all time. The production is absolutely flawless. The instrumentation is so perfectly judged and dynamic. He is so charismatic. This record just cemented him internationally almost overnight. It's just so emotional, and it's so on point. It's what, 33, 34 minutes? There isn't a single second that is wasted. How do you, it's like most people, they record Moondance and they drop the mic and they go, yeah, that's me. But this is a guy who then goes on to do all sorts of amazing stuff. And so, but did he genuinely record something that's so genre transcending? I mean, Astral Weeks is great, but it is a folk record. This has an argument for being up there as, one of the greatest albums of the 70s. And this is a Japanese first press, and I cannot find any more information. Now, I don't know how and where and what I'm going to do to price this. I think what I might do for the first time ever is just make this open to offers. It's super special. I told you. This is, the guys from Shinjuku just really dropped something special in my box. And there you go. How do I follow that? Well, you can't. But what about this? ACDC, for those about to rock, Japanese first press with this I guess, I don't know what the right word is. It's you can feel the letters and the canon, the obi. This thing, they've got a note on it saying it's never been played. For those of you who kind of want some evidence for whether a record's been played, look at the spindle hole, and that is perfect. When they say things have never been played, it typically means that it's been found in a studio or a radio station or something and is untouched. The obi is perfect. Everything about this is perfect. The most perfect copy of AC/DC's for those about to rock. Obviously, the follow-up to Back in Black, not as lauded as Back to Black, but has some classic Akadaka tunes. It absolutely solidified Brian Johnson as the owner of the AC/DC vocal sound, and I've got a soft spot for it. It's not as good, but it definitely continued their success, and just how relentless they were at producing, some of the most electrifying rock music in history. And good on them. Aussie band. Incredible. All right. I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit to a band that's not Aussie, it's not Japanese press, it's an Aussie press. In this case, that's a good thing. The Aussie press of this record is excellent. It's the one I have on my shelf. And it is one of those records that has a life here in Australia that it probably doesn't have in other places. And it is the Violent Femmes debut album. Blister in the Sun, Kiss Off, Please Do Not Go, Added Up, Confessions, Prove My Love, Gone Daddy Gone, Good Feeling, To the Kill, etc. This debut album is the most kind of punk acoustic record that you can possibly imagine. There is some jangle in there in places, but when you've got Gordon Gano's voice, it has a punk sensibility, but it is so addictive. I know Blister in the Sun has been, particularly in this country, just overplayed to, a kind of crazy pitch. But, the likes of Gone Daddy Gone, Please Do Not Go, etc., are incredible songs. And it caught on here before, really. I don't know if it was as beloved elsewhere as it is here. The cult following it has here is pretty a beautiful thing. And if you're going to love an early kind of alternative record, why not go for this one? It definitely influenced a generation of kind of indie rock music, there's no doubt. And this is a really nice copy. So if you don't have this on your shelf, I thought I'd put it on the list. Now, Moondance Japanese First Press is iconic for a bunch of reasons. But you know what? This next record is too, for all sorts of weird and wonderful reasons. This is the fourth record by the Welsh band. Now, I'll give a few clues. They were the Ivies. They worked with Paul McCartney and a bunch of other people. They signed with Apple, and they changed their name to Badfinger. And this record, Ass by Badfinger, is the final record ever released by the Apple label, which is why it is so desired. This particular Japanese press goes for a lot of money online. It's a really interesting record because it was originally meant to have been produced by Todd Rundgren. He lasted 1 week and he had a financial dispute and he buggered off. And then the band produced it themselves, and this guy called Chris Thomas came in to finish it. The record itself is really nice. It's got a really melodic and kind of beatly in places. You can see what they were doing. They're just a really, really cool band. But this sleeve, how did they get this approved? An ass staring up at some celestial hand holding a carrot. What? It's just astonishing. And then the Japanese kind of double down with this. So this is the original sleeve inner. So there's the ass. It's just amazing. There's the Apple label with, the word ass right in the middle of it. It's the most amazing thing. And this is the book that came with it. Ass. Badfinger. There are no words. This is typical kind of Japanese, all the English lyrics with photos and bits and pieces, all present and correct in fantastic condition. So, for those of you Beatles completists or Apple enthusiasts or anyone with a love for 70s kind of power pop, Ass by Badfinger. It's just, oh dear. Look, I like some of the songs on there. Apple and My, the opening track is actually really beautiful, and so they had some internal struggles and they didn't last very well, and they had a bit of a tragic history. But they'll always be beloved for ensuring that the last album in the history of Apple Records was called Ass. All right. Jimi Hendrix's second album, Axis Bold as Love. I think it's kind of fun that the sleeve of this kaleidoscopic sleeve with this really beautiful gatefold is the perfect representation of the music. I can't remember whether this is mono or not. I think it might be a stereo release. Because it is such a kaleidoscopic record. Psychedelia seeping out of its pores. Tracks like Little Wing and the title track. I guess, The Summer of Love did have its influence on Hendrix, but this is an album that's all about love and identity as a black man in a very white industry, in a very white world, doing something that was deeply resonant and really connecting with the youth movement in the UK in particular, beyond anything that he could probably have imagined. It was almost immediately hailed as a masterpiece, and in a funny way, it pales a little bit to, that kind of pounding, legendary debut album, and then of course Electric Ladyland at the end. But it has something. I don't know if it's enough to say that it's the best Hendrix album, but I've been reading some blogs, and there are those out there who have love for it. But when you're only talking about 3 studio albums, there aren't too many positions to put it. And the third best Jimi Hendrix record is better than the first best of just about everyone else. So, a really, 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 really nice copy. Okay, I'm going to keep powering on because I've got some really cool stuff still to come. I don't know whether this is a first or second press yet. I need to work out all the details. But this is Crazy Horse, first outing with Neil Young. And this is, everybody knows this is Nowhere. For those of you who think of Harvest and After the Gold Rush as your kind of Neil Young palette, the opening power chords of Cinnamon Girl will disabuse you of the notion that Neil Young was going to continue to be a hippy dippy. This thing is loud, rudely produced, raw, 10-minute takes of Cowgirl in the Sand or Down by the River, one of the great murder songs of all time. This thing is a beast of an album. Kind of amazing that it was released in the 60s. I mean, Neil Young is so far ahead of the game. You got Neil Young, Tom Waits, Paul McCartney, and you've got these guys who've transcended and 5 decades and made their mark. And I think Neil Young might be the greatest of them all. It is an absolute masterclass in storytelling, in honesty. The guy is a hoary, kind of grumpy dude that comes across in the music, but there's love, deep love for everything he does. If you don't have this album, I think it's a must for any record collection. It's a record that, as Spinal Tap would say, needs to be played at 11. All right. Now for something completely different, but equally interesting. I've always raved about the Japanese first press of The Kick Inside by Kate Bush. I've never been able to find affordable, perfect copies with Obi. The Obi, where the color melds into her top and the language, this cover is so much more compelling and beautiful than the Western sleeve. The record is an absolute delight. Kate Bush, what a beautiful thing. You will never find a more perfect copy. Kate Bush was a prodigy, obviously, from the minute that she started writing her own songs. Coming out the gate with this record is still fairly unprecedented. It's got to be in the mix for one of the greatest debut albums of all time. You could definitely make an argument that it is. And with Wuthering Heights being the best debut single of all time, it is a masterclass in literary interpretation, in pop accessibility and at the same time being deeply, deeply eccentric. I love it. It's great. It is not for everyone, but for those who do dig Kate Bush, that's a pretty special thing. All right, I'm going to have to be quick through the rest of these. Tumbleweed Connection, Elton John's kind of masterful Americana album recorded in Britain. It sounds so American. The Japanese loved it so much that they released it on red translucent vinyl. Those of you who've picked up the red translucent vinyl copies in the past know it sounds utterly magnificent. Tumbleweed Connection. Very ambitious, cohesive because of the sound, an interesting concept album. Again, rich storytelling, kind of like Kate Bush. Yeah, I think it's one of Elton's best, but I know there's a few of you out there who love, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, etc. But yeah, Tumbleweed Connection's really cool. All right, I'm going to flick through the rest of these really quickly because these are all records that you've seen before, but in the box for Christmas, the guys have given me just the most beautiful copies. Before I get to those, Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms. If you don't have a copy of this on your shelf, this copy that I came across recently is absolutely pristine. It's an Aussie copy. The Aussie copy sounds as good as any other copy of this record. The sleeve is fantastic. I kind of find it hard to believe that it is an Aussie copy in such good condition, but there you have it. One of my favourite kind of power pop records of the 70s is the Go-Go's debut album, Beauty and the Beat. It's got just some of the greatest power pop songs of the decade. Kind of cool sleeve as well. If you don't know Belinda Carlisle and Jane Wiedlin and the lot, yeah, give it a listen. It's pretty easy to love. All right, Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy, complete with Obi Strip. I haven't been able to find too many of these. The gatefold is perfect. It sounds really, really good. It's Houses of the Holy. The Japanese first press of Queen's greatest hits. I know there's a few of you out there who've grabbed this over the years, and I've heard nothing but good press. I have two Rolling Stones first presses, the Let It Bleed first press, and one of my favorite live albums of all time, Get Your Ya-Ya's Out, the Japanese first press, which comes in this fantastic gatefold. Highly, highly recommended. A lot of Western presses of this album really don't sound very good. The Japanese press sounds wonderful. Let It Bleed. Just go and look at the reviews on Discogs of that Japanese first press. It's wonderful. The Shortcuts royalty that is the Japanese first press of Tusk. I reckon 50 of you have this record now. And it is that good. And then finally, an absolutely pristine Neil Young Harvest. It looks like new. It came with the same listing that the Badfinger had, which was that it had never been played. I see zero evidence that this thing was taken out of its sleeve until I did. It's absolutely perfect. There isn't a single humidity spot. What an album. And that Japanese record sounds wonderful. So there you have it. The classic rock and pop, kind of new wave pop list for December 18th. If you would like to be on the price list, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Thank you so much. Please leave a comment. Bye.